Let's go to the Nationals leader, David Littleproud now. David, the GST carve-up certainly on Chris Minns's mind, but the story of the day ahead of the budget has got to be inflation, right? It hasn't been in that 2 to 3% band for 10 years, but Jim Chalmers is going to hand down a budget tomorrow night that says it'll be there by December.
Yeah, well, this is more of a political punt than any genuine appreciation of the human toll of what's being felt out there in the electorate at the moment, because what they're trying to do is mask over what are the drivers of inflation with short-term spending without addressing the fundamental policy levers that'll address them. And when you look at what's driving inflation, what's keeping it where it is, it's not the discretionary spend. Australians have stopped going to see Jerry Harvey. They can't afford to buy TVs and fridges. But what's continued to drive up is the fixed spending. And that's on your energy and your food bill. Food's gone up 10, energy up over 26%. And they're not fundamentally fixing those policy levers that would bring them down, that would take away that inflationary pressure. So we can have all the numbers in the world and you can mask over it with some cash splash for another 12 months. But if you don't fundamentally address the issues that are at play, then we've gone nowhere. And this is where you need courage in a budget to acknowledge and address those issues. And that's where I think, you'll see some sugar sweeteners by the Treasurer, which is an acknowledgement of failure, or that this has been created here in Canberra, not anywhere else, not by Vladimir Putin, but by the decisions this government has made and starting to get to that realisation. And when you've got a $750,000 mortgage, that's the average mortgage in Australia, you're paying $24,000 extra a year since Labor's come to government because they haven't addressed what's driving inflation, and the RBA has to act. So, this is a political punt more than any genuine attempt to drive down inflation and address the core principles that will keep our nation going and actually underpin manufacturing without having to subsidise.
Yeah, very cynical, David. You haven't even seen the budget. All of those things could be in it.
I might have been in Canberra too long, but when you look at what the pre-judgment, the pre-announcements are more around, the support for energy relief, and we've seen that from state governments as well. It's just an acknowledgement that an all renewables approach is having a significant impact on households. And then when you're starting to throw, $1 billion at subsidising manufacturing, at some point Australian taxpayers' money runs out, and you won't be able to keep manufacturing going unless you actually pull the policy levers to underpin it, which is with sensible energy policy that gives affordable, reliable energy, and IR policy that's fair and equitable.
Okay, so you go IR and energy, but you're talking about nuclear, which wouldn't solve any kind of inflation issue for at least a decade.
Well, what I would say is that you send the right investment signals, and what this government did was actually demonise gas and said we didn't need any more gas. As we said, and I've said from the very moment we became
didn't a gas policy just do the opposite? That's why a core group of the left are pretty upset.
If you let me finish.
Sorry.
Yeah, but if you let me finish, it's taken them 2 years to realise it's all about supply. This reckless race to an all renewables approach wasn't achievable. And we've wasted, and what's happened is the investment signals that they sent to the gas market, and I've seen it in my own electorate, is they packed up and went elsewhere. Because they had draconian policies put on them that took away that investment confidence and that money and that capital to other parts of the world. And so if you're going to increase supply, you've got to create an environment for someone to want to do that. And that's why we've been behind the 8 ball and why you're seeing higher energy prices. And even what they announced last week is all about platitudes unless they actually back it up with the actual policy changes, and we want to see that. But unless they do that, this could be all about platitudes rather than actual tactile things that will increase supply. And we're not against renewables. We're saying they'll play part of a significant mix in the renewables. We think renewables, particularly from national, should be on the environment you can't destroy, which is on people's rooftops and businesses' rooftops. Gas will need to be there, but you need firming power to underpin manufacturing in this country. Renewables and batteries won't be able to do that, no matter how much you want to subsidise manufacturing, because that's a core principle of having sovereign manufacturing in this country. And that's what we'll be articulating to the Australian people, is a clear choice around a long-term vision for our nation that will live up to our international commitments without destroying our economy.
Can we get a bit of bipartisanship, do you think, on investment in mental health? We had Jackie Lambie on Pete's program a little earlier. This was so close to the surface for her. She was in tears basically making a plea for more investment, particularly for young people. We saw that a couple of budgets ago when Scott Morrison was the Prime Minister. In this budget, forget about all those basic things that you talk about. We're talking about inflation, but what about mental health? Seems underfunded.
Yeah, I agree. And there is billions going into it, and it's also about getting the workforce we need to be able to support it. Yeah. And in regional areas in particular, we need to see those services come through. And one of the great organisations that have risen from a tragedy, Dolly's Dream. In fact, Dolly was at a school my son went to in Warwick, tore the school apart, tore the community apart. These are the sort of grassroots organisations that we should invest in, and we should understand that there needs to be a bespoke solution, that solutions in cities are different to regional areas. And I think there has been a bipartisan approach, and if the government was to come forward, I'm happy to pat them on the back with that, so long as they understand that we need to have bespoke solutions in bespoke regions and different areas. Even between suburbs, I suspect there's differences as well. And Jackie talked about drug addiction. I have a strong passion for that. I had a real ICE issue in my electorate. We put more counsellors out there, but we also need detox centres. For me, in Western Queensland, the only detox centre we have effectively is part of one in Toowoomba and then in Brisbane, and the places need to be increased. And we just need to understand when people want help, there is a short window of opportunity. We need to have our hands out with counsellors on the ground, but also that opportunity to get them away and get them reset. And I think that's just one thing that everybody here should be on board with. And I think if the government want to go down that track, you'll have bipartisan support in every way.
Yeah, I hope so. And hopefully we get that big dollars in the budget papers tomorrow. David, always good to talk to you. I'll see you soon.